Welcome back to the Commanders Declassified podcast. You may also know us as the WFT Declassified Boys. We are here. Shout out to everybody that's listening. Make sure you're subscribed, stay locked in. As we like to say, tell a friend to tell a friend, keep the podcast growing. You guys are doing a tremendous job of that. Make sure you leave a review, like, comment, subscribe, set the notification bell, ding, ding. Make sure you are always plugged into what we have dropping for you. And guess what? We are back at full strength tonight. We have Eric back in the building. Eric, what's going on?
Well, I wouldn't say full strength just yet. You get 78% of Eric tonight, which is good. Good as 100% of most fools, though.
We'll take it. Glad to have you back.
Correct. Yeah. And we got Brian in the building too, as usual. Bringing it strong. Brian, what's going on?
Same old stuff, fellas. How are you, Eric? Glad to have you back, man.
Glad to be back.
All right. Listen.
And, of course, we've got Ellie
every week.
Holding it down.
As usual.
We got to make sure we introduce.
I am always here.
He never gets introduced.
I will not be here next week, though. every single week that goes by, we get a little bit closer to football action. But tonight we're going to go over some things. We're going to focus primarily on Carson Wentz. He's still the topic du jour. He's a quarterback in this town. And now that Terry's under wraps, the focus is back on him to put things together. But before we do, I got the top 5 stories about the Commanders this week from all your favorite local beat reporters. Number 1, Brian, this is for you. Big deal or not a big deal? Dan Snyder has provided some dates that he would be available to the House Oversight Committee. He might testify. Big deal or not a big deal?
Not a big deal, because if there's something he doesn't want to answer, or he doesn't want to, or his lawyer doesn't want him to answer, he'll plead the fifth. There's isn't anything that he's going to do that will incriminate himself or expose new information that may incriminate himself or cause himself to be ousted as the owner of the football team. So not a big deal. And I imagine, too, that while he is giving these things out, these dates, there'll probably be some technical issue come the day of, and he may not be able to log on and testify either. So I'm very skeptical that he would actually do it, even though he's offering dates. I think it's more for show. So not a big deal for me.
Yeah, he's going to be up there like Dave Chappelle. I played the fifth.
Yes.
He's going to full sign, FIF, yeah.
Eric, this one's for you, man. Rivera says that the McLaurin deal is just the start of the organization retaining their own guys. Are you buying into that? Do you like it?
Yeah, I'm buying into it. We'll see who they retain before I tell you whether or not I like it. I think you got guys like Cam Curl, Cole Holcomb, probably Deron Payne's in the mix there. So those guys need to get locked up. Terry was the first domino. He was, the most important. I don't think anybody denies that. But now that he's locked up and they've got cap space to play with now, get those other guys signed. I'm all in.
It's going to be cold.
Oh, and Troy Apke. You got to re-up Apke. 100% a special teams ace.
Lifetime contract. All right, Brian. I want to know how excited you are about this. Terry McLaurin is leaving Ashburn and he's going to work out with Wentz in the offense. I think they're out on the West Coast. How excited are you to hear that?
I am super excited to hear that. We haven't seen Terry out on the field in a couple of months, 1 or 2 months, however long it's been, and we need him. Terry is our best wide receiver. We do have an upgrade at the quarterback position with Wentz, and we need these guys to gel. We need them to mesh. We need them to get the chemistry together, because this offense has been so sluggish the last several years, especially starting the season out. We need to start the season fast on offense. We need to be able to put drives together, score points. So he needs to get out there with him, throw, develop some chemistry with him, with Jahan, the other receivers, all of it. So very excited that that's happening, and looking forward to seeing what they do in training camp.
Yeah, super excited to hear that. See them throw together. we'll probably get a little clips on Instagram or Twitter. Something will leak out showing those guys working out together, and we'll get our hype all going and everything like that. So super excited about that. Eric, story number 4, and I think you'll appreciate this one, but I want to know how you feel about it. Joe Jacoby has been named a finalist to the 2023 Hall of Fame seniors and coach contributor category. How excited are you that Joe gets another shot at the Hall?
Yeah, I knew it was coming. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's a ton of guys in front of him, unfortunately, waiting for that. Senior committee, they only nominate like 1 or 2 guys a year as finalists. So good for him. I'm glad his name is still up there, but it's going to be a while. There's a lot of guys waiting to get in on that senior vote, and he's way back in the line right now, unfortunately. But yeah, good for him. Should have got in without being a senior, but it is what it is.
Agreed. And if you played for another team, or maybe if our team had kept the positive history going throughout the decades after he was done playing, I think he probably would have been in. But unfortunately, the state of your franchise does factor into the legacy of your franchise, which impacts players' ability to get into the Hall. And of course, he didn't really do TV a whole heck of a lot, at least not on a national scale. And so therefore, that also didn't give him the platform and visibility.
Yeah, somebody needs to show the Hall of Fame committee those theater vision commercials from back in the day. You get right in. Y'all remember that? I don't know if you guys remember those or not, but yeah, those are classics. Yeah, I think you're right. That the fact that he played for this team, Russ Grimm got in, they kind of made him the the representative for all of the Hogs, which I don't think is right. And I think I honestly think Jacoby should have gone in over Tony Baselli. Baselli had a really good career, but really short. Jacoby was good for a decade. He was on the all-decade team of the 80s. He made All-Pro, bunch of Pro Bowls, but the committee saw it differently. I disagree. I'm not on the committee, so I guess that's that.
It's gonna have to be, but yeah, I'm with you. I agree. Story number 5 and our final story. RFK was burning this week, like literally on fire. Brian, I know some of us still had some dreams about RFK one day. That's gone. Well, okay, let's be real. Should they just go ahead and bulldoze RFK at this point, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, if they're gonna leave it derelict and just a big giant hazard in the middle of the city, not being taken care of, not being utilized, then yeah, bulldoze it. Make some affordable public housing with it. Do something with it if they're not going to use it for a stadium, or if they're just not going to use it at all. Do something. But yeah, very sad to see how dilapidated it looked. The field looked just miserable, and just a random fire just sparking up out of the stadium there. Like it shouldn't be that. That area can be repurposed for so many different things that could be helpful to the city and to the area. So they need to get it together there in the district, with the mayor and the city council, and figure out something to do with it. Because leaving it derelict and leaving it to literally burn in the middle of the city isn't the answer. So they've got to figure something out there, because that was just awful to kind of see that happening.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. That stadium means so much to so many people, and to just see it just turn into what it is like the worst possible outcome. I think there would have been a little bit more mystique to it. They just took it down once they decided the team wasn't going to play there anymore. After the Nationals and DC United used it, and now our lasting image of that's just dilapidated, ruined, stadium that everybody thinks so highly of. So that is unfortunate, but yeah, we got to move on. We have to move on. All right, Carson Wentz. I think by now, if you've been listening to the podcast, we've covered Carson pretty thoroughly throughout. I think for the most part, we're really excited about what he can do in this offense and what he can bring, especially now with Terry in the fold. So what we did was we went out and we aggregated a lot of the different stories and themes that were out there about Carson Wentz, so that we can talk about them tonight in depth, right? So the first one I have here, and I want both of you guys to comment on this, but I'll start with you, Eric. Sam Fortier, he's a local reporter, or at least he reports on local things. He said one of the things that caused some tension in Indianapolis is because Carson Wentz is the type of quarterback that really likes to do things his way and his way only. Is that problematic, Eric, or do you think that's something that this team is built to work around and help him be successful even with that?
To be continued. I think it's problematic. I mean, if you've got a quarterback who's not receptive to doing things differently when what he's doing isn't working, you kind of heard this the last year in Philly, especially when he was kind of struggling a lot and not really willing to change his approach or what he was doing or take advice from the coaches. And I guess apparently that continued into his relationships in Indianapolis. So we'll see. Is Scott Turner the type of coach that can, massage that personality and either work around his inability to get through to Wentz or to actually get through to Wentz? We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that is a potential huge problem because it's followed him thus far throughout his career.
What I will say about this is, if there's any coaching staff that's going to allow him to do it exactly as he wants it to do, it would be this coaching staff, at least judging by resume, right? Scott Turner doesn't have a lot of success on his resume. So I can see him saying, okay, Carson, how do you want this to work? How do you want this to roll? Let's make it happen your way. So potentially, because of the inexperience of Scott Turner and the lack of success at the quarterback position we've had thus far, Carson Wentz might get more or as much rope as he's gotten anywhere in his career. So maybe they'll be willing to work around that. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think, first, kind of to your point of, Carson not wanting to kind of change some of the things that he was doing or kind of being a little stubborn when it comes to, how he was operating, these various offenses from Philly to Indianapolis. A lot of times, and I'm sure you guys see it, it doesn't even have to be football, right? When somebody experiences success quickly, right? They haven't put in the 5, 10, 15 years of work and struggle to obtain something great. Carson Wentz, pretty quickly right out of the gate, had a lot of success in that 2017 season. And guys think, hey, I physically did it. And they keep trying to recreate it, right? They keep trying to do it all themselves and be that hero, right? We saw with RG3, amazing rookie year. He kept trying to recreate that and not realizing, okay, hey, it worked once, but unfortunately, I've got to do different things moving forward. And I think Carson Wentz, it'll be big for him to realize, is he at that point? Did he hit rock bottom enough to say, okay, I was great in 2017, but it's going to take more than that. It's going to take me being different and me understanding I've got to do other things to be successful moving forward. I can't keep trying to recreate 2017. And I think that got him into trouble in those places and kind of, got him a little sideways with some of his teammates. Because I don't think Carson Wentz is just an evil person, right? I don't think he's just trying to be a jerk to his teammates or trying not to listen to his coaches or anything like that. But when somebody has that success so quickly, it's really hard for them to give up the idea that I can't reach that height ever again, or I've got to do something different to reach those heights because I did it one way, to start out. So I think if he can understand, hey, I've got to do something different to if I want to have some more success or long-term success or greater success, I think he'll be fine. I don't think it was ever a thing for him where he was just, trying to be a jerk to everybody. So hopefully he's there, and hopefully this coaching staff, I think, Rivera is a good communicator. He's very patient with these guys. We saw him be patient with Landon Collins and some of these other players for way longer than I think any fan would ever want to be patient with kind of their struggles. So I think this is the right group in terms of coaches and players to help Carson kind of take that next step. Sorry if that was too much.
No, I like it. With athletes, there tends to not be a rock bottom, or you know what I mean. Players that have had success so much throughout their life don't tend to be the most self-reflecting individuals in the world. You know what I'm saying? Enough to say, hey, I better get it together here. Like, especially not people at the level of success that Carson Wentz had. It's funny though, and for the record, I don't know that he needs to be. I just think he needs to understand that. Look, I don't want to move my family around every year. I want to continue with this football thing, so at least I'm going to give a little bit. it's not one of those scenarios where he has to completely change himself and do this soul searching and figure out how he's going to feed his family. He's not there. He's been paid pretty well. So the chances of him going into that type of place intrinsically are not going to happen. It's just not. He believes in success, and to be a quarterback in the NFL, you kind of have to, but it's just about how much compromise are you willing to give to make your relationship successful. And to your point, if anybody's going to do it, Ron Rivera is that type of coach. You mentioned RG3. It's funny because one of the quotes I remember most about RG3 his rookie year was like, they were like 3 practices in, and he's like, maybe it was after the first preseason game. I can't remember what it was, but he made a comment about how much easier practices were than the games, and how much harder college was than the NFL. It was something like that. I just thought to myself, oh man, you're gonna learn the hard way. But anyway. So a lot of times when you have beat reporters or former players that review the team, it's not always the smoothest thing in the world. If you remember, Chris Cooley did his film breakdowns. That kind of rubbed a lot of people in the locker room the wrong way. So Logan Paulson has kind of become that guy now for Washington who does the film reviews, the breakdowns, and things like that. And I bring up the Cooley situation. I bring up this because he made some comments about Carson Wentz on Ben Standing's podcast, The Standing Room Only, a few weeks ago. And I want to talk to them about you guys. And then I have something that came from Terry McLaurin that might counter what he said. I just kind of want to get your feel on how those things might contradict. But one of the comments that Logan Paulson made on Ben Standing's podcast was that the pressure in minicamp seemed to unsettle Carson Wentz a little bit. And he eventually started to react to pressure that wasn't there, which caused some errant throws. Eric, starting with you, is that alarming, or is that just natural process of learning what's going on within the offense, and how concerned do you get about that?
I mean, it's what we've seen from Carson Wentz in the past, especially the last couple of years that he's played. He's definitely gotten a lot more skittish in the pocket. So it is a little disconcerting to see that when you're talking about people in shorts and in shells, they're not even, you're not hitting, there's no contact, not that there would be in practice anyway. But, you see that now. And, you hear about that now. It's just something to keep an eye on moving forward. A lot of the other beat reporters that, commented on that didn't seem to think it was that big of a deal, but it remains to be seen because it is kind of par for the course from what we've seen from Wentz this past few years of outings.
Yeah, Brian, you agree?
Yeah, I think it's something to note, certainly, but I wouldn't get too worried about it now. We are so early in this process. If this is the end of training camp, preseason game, something like that, then maybe we can probably start to get some more worry about it. But he is learning a new offense. He is learning new teammates, timing and rhythm, and there's also a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure on him as well too, right? It's his third team, so I can see him wanting to impress, wanting to kind of show everybody, hey, I can still do this. So maybe there was a little bit of jitters when he got some pressure, that kind of thing. So I'm not that worried about it right now. If we get deep into training camp and it's been a continuous thing, or it's persisting, or it's getting worse, then yeah, I think we probably need to sound the alarm then.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Brian. I'm not really concerned about it at this point because, when we were at OTAs, they were working on plays that kind of were long developing plays. And perhaps there was some of that. He didn't have Terry in there. We don't know what checks he had in the game or what he could and couldn't do, or if they were specifically working on something that required him to hold on to the ball or whatever. And of course, it could have been because the offensive line can't be as aggressive as they normally would. The pass rush was just getting there throughout practice, and then he started getting, moving up the pocket because he wants to keep himself healthy. I don't know, but I do know that Logan played football. I know that he knows what he's talking about, but I'm just not overly concerned about it coming from minicamp. If we start to see that early on in the season, then we will revisit this topic, and I'm going to have some problems. But right now, I think I'm okay. Now, on the flip side of that, Terry McLaurin himself came out and said Carson Wentz doesn't get enough credit for his toughness in the pocket. Now, Terry wasn't around, so I don't know if he's just talking about from film or what have you, but if it comes from Terry, is that good as gold at this point? Eric?
Yeah. I think that kind of alludes to the point Brian made a little earlier about him, the way he kind of plays hero ball a little bit, where he just holds on to it until the last possible second, and he'll end up taking some sacks or some unnecessary hits. But I mean, your guys that you play with, if you're giving them every opportunity to succeed, then they're not going to say a bad thing about you. So, no, I like that Terry has that attitude about him, and I actually like that about Wentz, that he really tries to make something of the play. As much as he can. So yeah, it's probably going to lead to some issues later in the season. He is going to take more hits than he probably should. He may take a couple extra sacks, but I'm okay with it if the players are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if Terry's good with that, then I'm good with it. We've talked about Carson a lot. There are good things and bad things with his game, and one of those is hey, he is going to try to make a play, and he'll come up with a great 65-yard touchdown pass because he held the ball and found Terry deep, and then he'll hold the ball and get sacked for maybe a 10-yard loss. We'll have to take the good with the bad on those, but yeah, I think I think those are good comments. If that's where they're at right now, awesome.
Absolutely. And the last topic that I saw from reporters this offseason about Carson was just that somebody from the Indianapolis area felt that a lot of the hate was totally irrational and corny. That was from Kevin Kincaid out there regarding Carson Wentz. It seems to be kind of a popular thing for reporters and television personalities to really jump on the Carson Wentz narratives that are coming out of the Indianapolis, which are being spearheaded by the owner and things like that. And some of them are using it to downgrade us and our potential this season. But Eric, do you agree that a lot of the hate that Carson's getting is irrational and just not warranted?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, like in any profession, there's going to be a lot of groupthink in the media, and it's a popular topic that he has been, and it's kind of funny because if you think about it, man, you would think he really just stunk it up last year for the Colts. Like people just talk about him like he threw like 25 interceptions and 10 touchdowns, not the opposite. He threw 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. I'll take that. Now, of course, we used to have Kirk Cousins at our quarterback, so we understand that stats aren't everything, right? Like there's definitely probably something to what these guys are saying, that he doesn't always come through in the biggest moments, that sort of thing. But I mean, I think the hate is really bad. And I think you nailed it, where a lot of it's being spearheaded by the Indy front office. I mean, Jim Irsay just, the whole, I don't know if it was the COVID vaccine thing or whatever, just didn't, rubbed him the wrong way. And he was just done with Wentz and he wanted him gone. And now Chris Ballard and Frank Reich are just being good soldiers. They got to, toe the company line, unfortunately. So they're not going to dispute any of the negative stuff. I don't think it was as bad as I said. And some, team leaders from the Colts did step up and have some supportive comments about Wentz. So, excuse me. I think, it's definitely going to take him playing well to turn that narrative around, but I do think it's a little bit of an unfair narrative at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, I agree. Eric nailed it all the way through on that. It is, is there criticism for Carson? Absolutely. But, most of the media, when there is something negative, they all tend to kind of jump on it because it is a simple, easy kind of storyline. I mean, we see that here, right? Something happens and then everybody is reporting a similar story, and they continue to do it months, weeks, sometimes even years later, right? We have the same storyline here that nobody would want to re-sign here, but we've gotten guys to re-sign here. So certainly there is criticism for Carson, but it's just been way over the top. And then, of course, when he got traded here, that criticism, went to the next level with just kind of the overall perception of the Commanders of Washington added into it. So, yeah, I think a lot of it is a little unfair because, it wasn't like he was playing awful. I mean, Eric said it, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I think we would take that versus a lot of the quarterback play we've had here in the last several years. So a little too much, a little over the top. And I think all that criticism should at least be on hold until we see him play.
Yeah. And, I think it's fair because it generates conversation. And I think, what makes sports great is the conversation around sports. So, Now, is it fair to Carson? I think a little bit. It's a little overblown. I just think that we are in a lazy media narrative environment. You know what I'm saying? Where some folks will just take what one show is saying and just continue going with it and add their own little spice to it, or not really doing their own homework or research. And that's not to say that Carson Wentz is a top 5 quarterback. He's not. But a lot of this is just out of control and a little bit out of pocket. And they're acting like Carson Wentz is like the 50th best quarterback. There's 10 backups you'd rather have and all this nonsense, or we're only going to win 3 games. But it's like, and I don't like a lot of it when people say this, like, oh, well, we won this many games with the harder schedule and all this stuff, because you never know. Like, this year's schedule could be tougher because, teams are different now than they were last year. But the fact remains, this team won 7 games with Taylor Heineke last year. You know what I'm saying? So to think that we're going to be a 3 or 4 win team because we have Carson Wentz is nonsense to me. It's just absolute nonsense. And that's the kind of stuff I say is just out of pocket. It's just, hating because it's the thing to do right now. It's popular. It's generating clicks and views and stuff like that. I never mind honest opinions about, players or anything, but just to say stuff just to have stuff to say is when I start to get a little annoyed by that. Mobility with Carson Wentz. I find this very interesting. Carson Wentz's 40 time was a 4.740. I think it was a 4.77 to be exact, which is a little bit more agile than I think I was thinking about Carson Wentz. Eric, do you see us taking advantage of Carson Wentz's mobility this year at all, or do you think the injuries and things like that will probably have us limiting how much we put him at risk in that situation?
Like, I don't think we'll do many design runs with Carson Wentz. He's definitely not Josh Allen, especially at this point in his career. I think that, he's still got a little bit of that escapability. He can, scramble if he needs to, but I don't think it's going to be a focal point for him, nor should it be. He's a goofy looking runner. Even when he was 100% healthy, he was never like the most agile, nimble guy. He just happened to be fast, straight ahead. Good for him. He can, it's just an extra, wrinkle to his game, a little extra something that defenses may have to think about, or they may forget about until he burns them for like a 25-yard scramble, because there's, everybody's in man coverage downfield. So I think it'll be used. I don't think it'll be a focal point though.
Okay. Brian, you say the same?
Yeah, I think with the past 2 years, what we've seen of Scott Turner's offense, he is not necessarily looking to have, read option or designed runs from the quarterback. If the quarterback runs, it's because the quarterback, didn't have any options and he had to run. But you're not going to see any of that. Looks like, from Scott Turner, he likes a traditional drop back passing game. But Carson is absolutely mobile, and he's big and he's tough to bring down, which also helps, buy him some time, because guys can't necessarily get a good beat on him to bring him to the ground. So he will absolutely be able to buy time. Is he going to, scramble, for 20, 30 yards on a regular basis? No, I don't think so. I think his mobility right now is better served to kind of keep the play alive so he can look downfield to make a play. But yeah, don't expect Scott Turner to be calling, quarterback draws, quarterback powers, any of these designed runs. That's not going to happen. If Carson runs, it's because he had no other choice and he had to run.
Yeah, there's different kinds of mobility when it comes to quarterbacks too. It's not just, there's like Lamar Jackson mobility, Josh Allen mobility, and then you've got like the Ben Roethlisberger type of like escapability, where he can move around in the pocket and keep the play alive. And I think that's what Carson has than, the design run, the read option type play.
Yeah. So, think about it, Eric, you nailed it right there with that. Heineke's actually fast. He has straight line speed. Like, how many times do we see him run around the outside and run for that or dive for that pylon at the end zone? He has legitimate speed, and we never really saw a read option or any type of design run with Heineke. It was very rare, if at all, we saw something like that. So yeah, I think it'll be up to Carson on how much he runs or he doesn't run.
Yeah, Heineke's definitely a scrambler. That's a third kind of mobility. There's the runners and the scramblers and the movers. I think Carson's a mover.
Yeah, Carson and Heineke have very similar 40 times, by the way, Brian. So now I think Heineke's probably the better athlete of the two. I'm joking, but they do have similar 40 times. I went back and I was looking at Haskins, rest in peace, his usage in the run game in Scott Turner's first year. Just because I think he's more similar to that than what you would see from a Heineke. Heineke was generally more productive when he scrambled, and thus I think that was a major part of what he did because he had to be successful. But I was going back and looking to see if they really used Haskins in the run game at all, and they didn't. He had scrambles, or 7 rushes in one game and things like that, but that's because he got flushed out of the pocket. But yeah, he was not a factor in the run game under Scott Turner. At the end of 2019, with that coaching staff, yes, he had some read options. He had a couple carries, but under this regime, it wasn't there. I don't anticipate it being there either. I mean, there's just too much at risk to have that happen. I think Carson Wentz is a quarterback who knows how to play from the pocket, so you're going to rely on him to do that and create opportunities, not to mention all the weapons that you have. Ideally, you're going to use those like short passes as part of the run game too, so there really won't be a need for that. Okay.
Just hand it off to Brian Robinson.
Get your yard and get out of there. Yeah, that's right. No, I'm kidding. All right, so let's finish it up this way. Baker Mayfield got traded, and this became a big thing on Twitter. This was a hot topic all over social media, at least Commander's social media. I saw numerous tweets about it. One of our listeners and good guy David Reedman posted about this, and it just set the world on fire. I saw Ivan Lambert Jr. created an article about this. And it's a comparison of the value of the two trades between Carson Wentz and Baker Mayfield. And Brian, I think you brought this up in our podcast chat group. But Eric, let's start with you. In terms of the Baker Mayfield trade and the Carson Wentz trade, which to you was the better value? And do you have any regrets about what the Commanders did as opposed to some other alternatives, specifically Baker?
Obviously Baker Mayfield at this point is the better value, but you can't look at it that way because when Washington traded for Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield wasn't going to be available yet. We didn't, the whole Deshaun Watson thing hadn't unfolded. As far as we knew, Baker Mayfield wasn't going to be on the market. That's one thing. Another thing is had they waited an extra week or two to find out that Baker Mayfield was going to come available, if you trade for Baker Mayfield in March, you're going to give up more than you do if you're going to trade for him in July when everybody else has it. Everybody basically has their quarterback at this point. So the value, obviously, yes, I'd rather give a fifth than 2/3. Of course, who wouldn't want to do that? But I think, looking at it, all things considered, I don't have a problem with the way Washington handled it. I might have waited a little longer because, again, I wasn't a big fan of Wentz and I wasn't a big fan of the trade initially. I might have waited it out to see if, what shook out with the free agency and what shook out with some of the Deshaun Watson situation. So I think maybe we jumped the gun just a little bit, but all things considered, I don't think the Wentz deal was a bad deal. And if he works out, it was a great deal.
Yeah. Brian, give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the kind of going back and looking after the fact of saying, well, Baker got traded for a 5th round pick, or they're eating half of his salary. The Browns are, we made a mistake. But Eric's right. You have to look at the context now. Baker's getting traded, 1-2 weeks before training camp. And as a team like ours, whose offense has been struggling, we didn't really have that luxury of waiting that long to find a starting quarterback. We have a young offense, and we needed somebody to come in here, be the definitive quarterback leader of this offense. And that way the fan base could get behind them and we could actually get some of these other deals done, right? Like the whole Terry contract, like we had to get that done first. Like, I don't think Terry would, have signed if, we still have this kind of question mark hanging open at quarterback, right? Is it Heineke? Is it, who else? Is it Howell? Like, you just don't know. So, I think the only area where, Ron kind of, didn't kind of succeed in was Ron the negotiator, right, for the trade. I think he got a little anxious in the negotiations. I think, if he had realized he was probably only negotiating against himself or negotiating against the fact that the Colts were probably going to release him, just to free agency, then, maybe he could have offered up a little bit less. But outside of that, I think they went the right direction, which was find a guy early, get him in-house, get him acclimated to your system, your players, and, start building something as to kind of playing this game, waiting so long. So I'm fine with what they did, and to go back and say, hey, this guy was a little bit less. Okay, he's a little bit less, but is what he's going to give you in terms of actual play on the field worth more? I don't think it is. I think, what you're going to get out of Baker and Carson are probably very similar in terms of results, stats, wins, all those different things like that. So you may have paid a little bit less, but I think for us in our circumstance, we made the right call.
Yeah, I think it was the right call for a number of reasons. Number one, it happened before the draft. And if you didn't get this quarterback situation taken care of, they were probably going to have to reach in the draft for a quarterback because they weren't sure what was going to go on early in the draft. And I did not want them to do that. I did not want us to end up with Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral, who's essentially just been replaced twice with Sam Darnold and now Baker. I didn't want them to reach for anybody. I was on the Malik Willis train, I will say that, but it didn't seem like they were going to go that direction, right? Nor did a lot of other teams, as a matter of fact, since he went in the third round or something like that. So I like the fact that it didn't force their hand in the draft, and then they were able to go out and get a Dotson, who everybody thinks looks great so far. But if you don't have Wentz, you're probably not getting Dotson in the process, nor are you probably getting a receiver either. So I think that would have changed the focus of the draft, and I like that it did not. Number two, Baker Mayfield, for me, is one of those guys that's an underdog. We as a fan base tend to fall in love with underdogs regardless of their production, regardless of their positive impact or lack thereof on the team. I don't want to go through that again. I want us to be in the business of figuring out if we have a franchise quarterback or not. And if we don't, dump him, go get another one, figure it out with that one. If he doesn't work, dump him, get another one, and keep going. Forget about the feelings. I don't want the feelings part. I don't want the feel-good stories. I don't want the come from behind wins late in the season that makes you say, oh, maybe he is the guy. He just needs this. No, I'm done with that, right? Carson Wentz gives us the opportunity to definitively know at the end of this year if we got a guy or if we don't, and then we can take proactive action to address that in whatever direction that goes. So I love that aspect of Carson Wentz because people don't love Carson Wentz. They like him, which allows people to remain objective about his performance this year on the field, which I cannot state or overstate. That is so important, especially as a fan, to really understand how we feel about this guy at the end of the year. Number three, this is a coaching staff who has really struggled to address the quarterback position since they got here. Now they got a guy that they wanted. If they wanted Carson Wentz over Baker Mayfield, I'm glad they got him, period, because they made the bed. They got to sleep in it, right? They got to lie in it. So if this is a guy they want to ride with, they should have the right, and they have every right to get the guy that they want, period. And if this is who it is, let's roll. If they wanted Baker Mayfield, but they settled for Carson Wentz, it's a different conversation. We'll never know that. As far as we know, this is the guy that they wanted. And as a matter of fact, this is the guy that they want to be our quarterback for the next few years. And so that tells me they really did want this guy. So I'm cool with that. Now, the value conversation is a completely different conversation. On a mathematical level, yes, Baker Mayfield was the better value. But is he the better fit situationally for us? I don't think so. I do think Carson Wentz is the better fit, especially with Scott Turner's offense and what he likes to do, or at least what we think he likes to do. It seems like Carson Wentz gives him the better opportunity to stretch the field. And Carson Wentz is a better distributor, especially to where our key positions are, than I think Baker Mayfield has been historically. I didn't look up any stats to back that up, but that's just my eye test. I think Carson Wentz does that a little bit better than what they've gotten out of Baker Mayfield historically. And lastly, Carson Wentz's peak far exceeds the peak that we've seen from Baker Mayfield thus far. The interesting aspect of both of those is both of those guys were at their best in their rookie season, right? So it's going to be interesting, from here on out, because I do think there'll be a little bit of the rumblings of this throughout the season if Carson Wentz gets off to a slow start. But hopefully he doesn't, and hopefully this goes to bed. I understand those that say, hey, Baker was a better value. I do understand that argument. I just think there's more context to it that's needed so that you understand that this franchise really did want this guy. So
one thing I don't hear people talking about with Baker and with Wentz is Baker's coming from a run-centric offense where he had, I think either the number 1 or number 2 rushing offense in the league, an excellent offensive line. If he were to come here, he's going to be asked to be the offense, right? Our team, our offense isn't a run first. I know at times we were during that 4-game win streak, but overall the past 2 years, if anything has shown us, we're going to be a pass first team. That's something Carson Wentz is used to and is able to handle. You would be asking Baker to come here and be, 35, 40 times a game throwing the football. So it would be a little bit different for him coming from Cleveland here to Washington. So I think that, to me, that would be a little concerning because you'd be asking him to do something that he hasn't yet done necessarily in the NFL. So I think a lot of people should consider that. And I think if we look at kind of fit, I think we've got a guy who fits more our style of play versus kind of what Baker would be.
Yeah, and you've seen Baker with weapons that Carson Wentz really hasn't had either. Also, Baker Mayfield had a running game. He had 2 wide receivers in Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. He had tight ends. Like, he had guys that he could distribute the ball to. And, Wentz has had Zach Ertz, and he's never really had, and Dallas Goedert. But he's never really had great weapons at wide receiver. So this will be a new experience for Wentz, whereas we've seen kind of what Baker Mayfield has done with weapons, and it hasn't always been great.
Yep.
Yeah, and Baker and the OBJ relationship was a strange one to me.
Yeah.
Because Baker was far worse as a quarterback when OBJ played in the game. And that tells me that there's a little bit of mental fragility there where the dominant personality of OBJ impacted Baker's ability to play and the confidence he had in himself because he felt like he had to force the ball to OBJ because OBJ was on the field saying, hey, I'm open. You want your quarterback to be a leader through and through that says, OBJ, I don't care how many nice catches you got. Shut up. I'm in charge. This is what we're going to do. I'm throwing it to the open guy. But for whatever reason, that relationship didn't really click. Now, none of our receivers seem to be that kind of guy, but I want more mental toughness out of Carson than what we got or what we saw from Baker in Cleveland. Now, let's talk about Carson. Carson did have some moments, like when they drafted our guy Hurts, that it seemed to like impact
Your
him
guy.
a little bit. Yeah, my guy.
Not my guy.
Yeah. And of course, he was dealing with the injury too. So he has to prove some of the mental toughness things himself as well. But I think I'd take Carson over Baker most days if we're excluding value. And I'm not in the value part or department for the Commanders. So I can just say, hey, I'll take Carson, So, but it's an interesting topic. It really is. And it certainly warrants some discussion. So I understand that. All right, Brian, final thoughts?
My final thoughts, I want to hear Eric tell us about when he heard that McLaurin got extended for $71 million. Your favorite player, Eric, how'd you feel?
I sat up in bed when I shouldn't have, and I got a head rush because I was laying in bed with COVID. And I said, Terry got his extension, and oh crap, I feel like crap again. No, I'm excited. I'm very happy. Relieved. Just don't have to deal with it anymore. I kind of assumed it was going to get done. And I was, like I said before, I was at a 1 as far as like anxiety level over it because I just, nothing surprises me with this team. But it's good to have him back. Glad he's here. Got a nice extension. Got a payday. The team isn't cash strapped because of it. I think it's a good deal all the way around.
Did you see any of his press conference yesterday?
I heard the clips. It just solidifies the fact that he's a stand-up dude. He's a great teammate. He's not a diva wide receiver. But he is an alpha on the football field, and that's where it matters.
Absolutely.
All right, my final thoughts are this. Do not, and I repeat, do not get your hopes up because Dan Snyder is going to testify or potentially testify with the House Oversight Committee. It won't result in what you think it's going to result in unless by some miracle, there's an admission of something that he can't walk back. But you know how it goes. The NFL protects the NFL like nobody's business. So I'm just going to take it in stride, like Brian said earlier, and we'll just see what happens. But I'm gonna keep my focus on the football field. I'm excited, and we're getting ever closer to training camp because I believe our guys report on the 26th of July, which is just 2 weeks away, which is really, really cool. So we're getting close. All right, you made it this far, Brian. What do they need to do?
You need to go to our audio platform, wherever you listen to our podcast on audio, Apple, Google, Spotify. Go ahead, go there, subscribe, like, follow. If you can leave us a 5-star review, please do so. It only takes about a minute, and it helps us grow. That way we can reach out to other Commanders fans. Check out our website, WFTdeclassified.com. We've got some awesome articles up there. We've got interviews. We've got interviews with NFL agents, college football coaches. We've got interviews with local radio legends on there. We've got interviews with sports technology CEOs on there. And then check out our YouTube page because we've got all of that stuff on the YouTube page as well, too. That way you can see Eric, you can see LE talking. And like and subscribe on that platform as well. We've got some other articles that are coming out here in the next couple of days, some new videos as well, too. So stay tuned, everybody.
Stay locked. And listen, I hope everybody had a good, safe 4th of July. And if you're listening to us in the car and you're on your way to work, have a great day. If you're on your way home from work, get there safely. And man, we appreciate all you guys. We cannot say this enough. When we do look at the stats and we have a lot of female listeners, male listeners, a lot of everything listeners around the country, around the globe. We appreciate every single one of you. Even if we've never heard from you personally because you're not on social media, we appreciate you checking us out. You guys have a tremendous day, evening, night, morning, whenever you're catching this. And we will catch you next time. We are out of here.